warrior, cost everything.
And what did you do before this?
I was a cop. A driver.
You're a winner, Max.
But he's just a raggedy man.
You happy out there, are you? Hey, wandering? Tell me your story, Max. Come on, tell me your story. What burned you out, huh? Kill one man too many? See too many people die? Lose some family?
I promise you, nobody gets out of here alive.
You want to get out of here?
You talk to me.
Took it in the guts, Barry.
I reckon you got a bargain, didn't you?
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and joining me, I have James. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
Well, today we are going to be kind of highlighting a trilogy, and I know what you're saying. It could be Star Wars. No, this is Carlos and James not talking about Star Wars.
What?
Well, the reason we are heading in this direction is because a trailer that we've seen a while back, and we know this movie's been in production for a while, and in a couple of months or a couple of weeks, this movie's going to premiere, called Mad Max Fury Road. Now, if you take this movie just by the trailer alone, and if you kind of forget the fact that this movie has a history behind it, I think the trailer that they presented back around, it might have been either Comic-Con or one of these big presentation type of things, and since
I think it was Comic-Con in 2014.
Yeah, it might,
last summer.
That sounds kind of familiar, that time frame. And since then, they've released a couple of new additional trailers, you know, kind of teasing the movie and what it's all about. I personally think it is the best trailer they've put out, at least for this season, you know, for this upcoming summer batch of movies. I even liked it even better than the Star Wars trailer in terms of how it looks and how, like, it kind of blew me away. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there's no compare. The Star Wars trailer is 88 seconds of really nothing. So this thing, there is no question where this movie is going and what they want you to see. It's all action. I mean, every bit of it seems action-packed, and I can't say it's better than what we've seen already, but I have a pretty good feeling they've at least made the effort.
Yeah.
And there is action. The music is fantastic. I hope, like a lot of times in trailers, they use music that's not quite the music. I hope this is part of the music that they use because it's so, you know, fantastic. Yeah, of all the trailers that have come out, this one makes you really want to get into that world.
Yeah, there's a certain tone to the trailer. And again, like you said before, just like the music, I hope it's not something that they're doing just for the trailer. The music, yes, I hope they use that kind of really out of place music in the actual film itself. But the look of that trailer, there are certain colors, and I remember mentioning this before, that are almost surrealistic in terms of they're kind of over the top, the way the colors pop. It's not just a bland yellow desert that we might have seen a zillion times in previous films, even on Mad Max films, if you think about it, in the original film, in the sequel, and in the secondary, you know, the second sequel, Beyond Thunderdome, where you see a scene of a desert and it's just plain kind of dusty yellow. Here, it's almost like comic book colors. They're such hard, bright colors having to do with what we're about to see in this film that again, it's like, oh, please tell me the movie is exactly like this trailer. And it looks like it's going to be just a complete car chase, stunt work, marathon that we're going to see, which was one of the things that was the driving, no pun intended, but the driving force of the original 3 films. So let's start talking about these original films.
Yeah.
Because I personally didn't see them in order. I first probably saw The Road Warrior, which is also known as Mad Max 2. First, I might have seen it either on HBO or on video. How about you?
Yeah, I have a feeling you're right. I thought I might have seen it on VHS even, because I heard about it first in Starlog. Of course, it always goes back to Starlog. I read about it. It was, like 79-ish, I think, right?
The first film you're talking about? The first film, yeah.
Okay. I think I had known who Mel Gibson is. I could be wrong, but reading about him in Starlog, of course, helped. And it kind of had this punk look to it. And I mean punk like the Sex Pistols punk. A lot of leather, a lot of guys who looked like they were up to no good. And it was Australia. And Australia was coming on as one of these like hip places. It hadn't quite been Crocodile Dundee, Australia yet.
No.
But there was a character, Robert Scorpio, who was from Australia. I had known who Ian Ogilvy was. I think he was from Australia. He was in New Saint, The Return of the Saint. And so Australia was really coming on strong. Tegan from Doctor Who was from Australia, supposedly. So that was kind of like, wow, Australia. Ooh, it's like when you hear some things. But I think what really led me back to it was by the time Road Warrior came out.
Right.
Everybody then went back to say,
it's like, where did this come from? What is this all about? So you have to go backwards a little bit. And again, just like Road Warrior, it might have also been one of these video deals. I don't think any regular channel would have aired it. I think maybe if you got lucky, maybe cable. But to me, it smells like video.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of it it's a film and all that. It's 35 millimeter, but it looks a little cheesy. And I believe a lot of it was dubbed, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of the voices were
the
dubbed.
American version was dubbed when released in America, including Mel Gibson's voice.
Exactly. I'm pretty darn sure the one I saw, his voice was not Mel doing an American voice, Mel doing an Australian voice, it was not Mel. It was somebody else doing it.
Right.
And ironically, The Road Warrior came out either the same day or pretty darn close to Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. So just a little something, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. What was the release date in America?
May 21st.
Okay, so it beat Star Trek by about 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks, because Star Trek, I think, was June 4th. Star Trek 2. But anyway, back to the first one. First one's got a punk look. It's a lot of leather, cool car. They've got these police interceptors. They're made out of Holdens, I believe. It's either a Holden or a Falcon. I mean, I know car people will kill me about it to know one's Chevy, one's Ford. But regardless, it was really cool. But it was basically as if they're trying to say, like, the world is kind of unsettled for various reasons. And there's some rape, and there's some mayhem, and there's some bad dudes. And Max is a police officer, basically. Some of the police officers are getting their asses kicked. There's basically attack, the good guys versus the bad guys at a certain point.
Right.
And Max is the hero.
It's basically a revenge film.
Yeah. And that's how it starts. But it's kind of just an okay movie. Like we said, it feels a little cheesy when you're looking at it, and it's just an okay movie, even though it's pretty cool. Is that how you feel? Yeah,
I mean, when you compare it, or when I compare it to the second one, it looks so, to me, kind of amateurish in a way. It's like it's so scaled back because it's the original. Now, granted, it was a huge hit in Australia. It's a big deal for Australians at the time. That movie was considered, one of the best films that they put out for that time frame. And I don't think the Mad Max had that big of an impact here initially. I think the fact that it was successful in Australia, somebody must have said, listen, we can really make a lot of money if we really amp this up, maybe get an American distributor and an American studio behind it and put some real, couple of millions of dollars behind it and go and try to make, a second film, which kind of, if you think about it, it's going to kind of retell the story again. He's now become almost like a man with no name, Clint Eastwood type of character. He's the gun for hire, if you will, but he's so much cooler in the second one. And just the location, even though you know we're still dealing in Australia, it's many, many years later, and the technology, if you will, has so devolved. The cars are nowhere near what they used to be. And by the time you get to the third film, they're even worse, in worse shape. But the second one just has such a great tone to it compared to the first.
So let's talk about The Road Warrior.
Well, again, like you mentioned before, Starlog is what I remember. I remember Starlog talking about it. And again, at that time, for me, it just wasn't enough to go see it in the theater. I don't know. I wish I could have seen it in the theater. This is one of these movies where if I hear that it's going to be playing in, like, for example, at the Alamo, I would love to go see a 35 millimeter print.
I would too. Yeah, that would be something else. Because this one I also believe I saw on video. Even though it was in the theater, I'm pretty sure I was preoccupied because 1982 was a big year.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure I was preoccupied with everything else that we've talked about. And I know you did a show about 1982.
Yeah, every other weekend there was something coming out that was, distracting you, getting your movie dollars away from your pocket.
But The Road Warrior changed these type of movies. It was very dystopian, post-apocalyptic, all those kind of adjectives that you can call a movie like this. There's supposed to have been maybe nuclear war or heavy war in the North and North America and Europe and everything like that. There's a gas shortage. There's a leadership shortage. There's all kinds of chaos. And they basically filmed this in the outback, basically, where everything is pretty desolate and desert-like. And it was basically a modern Western. It was good guys versus crazy leather-clad bad guys. I mean,
it's the Outlaws, yeah.
If it had more gay themes in it, there's so much leather in this, it makes, Priscilla Queen of the Desert look like, it's a bunch of straights compared to all the leather in the Road Warrior.
And even though it's technically, if you think about it, it's a science fiction because you're dealing in a post-nuclear, world, they don't really...
they don't talk. Does it say nuclear or anything? It's just basically like a heavy war. Like war has...
No, I think it's supposed to be post, but not necessarily. I mean, it might not be nuclear in that particular area, but definitely by the time we get to the third film, we kind of see the ruins of Sydney, for example, and how they're trying to reclaim Sydney back. But...
Yeah. That's true.
What I'm saying is that the special effects in the movie, it's not so much seeing war scenes and actual battles between countries or anything like that. It's the majority of it is just stunts. It's car stunts, chases. It's the type of thing that, for example, nowadays you take movies like which we've talked about in the past, or we are about to talk to in the future, movies like Fast and the Furious, where the driving force is the car stunts. It's a way to generate a movie around the ability to make these incredible car stunts. This is how the movie is presented, and this is how the second film especially becomes more of a commercial Hollywood action adventure type of film.
I remember pretty hardcore. The car now it just seems a lot cooler. It turns out he's basically roaming the wastelands.
With his dog.
With the dog. Gasoline is either hard or almost non-existent. People will shoot you, steal your gas, and leave you for dead. Or shoot you, rape you, steal your gasoline, and leave you for dead. It's basically anything goes, and the desert is the Wild West. And they get into a situation, basically, where gas is gold.
Well, unlike the first film that, like I mentioned earlier, it's a straight revenge film. They kill his partner, and then they kill his wife, and he's got nobody left except to just take revenge on the people that did this to him. That's the driving force on the first film. On the second film, he's like we mentioned, he's kind of like the man with no name, kind of wandering the desert.
He's a reluctant hero.
Right, he's reluctant. He's almost an anti-hero, if you will. He's a hard... man in terms of, he doesn't really care about anything except for his dog.
I feel he has no interest in being a hero.
No.
He needs some gas. He needs, a few things and wants to be on his way. But I guess because he meets the people running this small refinery who are basically being stalked by Humongous.
Right, they're under siege.
Humongous is this gang of desert marauders who are basically trying to infiltrate this compound. And the funny thing is, these people are like gorgeous, handsome men, pretty ladies, children. They're wearing white. It's like Lawrence of Arabia-esque, and the bad guys are just like, imagine the
like
craziest
leather
looking punks and leather guys. And
right.
It's everything going it changed everything going forward in terms of how the post-apocalyptic future would look. And these guys, it influenced other movies. I remember the G.I. Joe line included some characters that were like, Mad Max characters because it became such a big deal.
Well, like you mentioned, like the good guys are all wearing white and they're very handsome and beautiful. The bad guys are ugly and they're in leather and they're dirty and disgusting. And again, the anti-hero aspect of the film, Max is also in leather and he's wearing black and he's nowhere near as clean as the so-called good guys. And he becomes, like in a Western, the guy they hire in a way or trick into working for them to kind of help them defeat the bad guys. In this particular case, it's not about defeating the bad guys. It's about providing enough of a distraction so that the good guys can get the whatever gasoline they have left in their area and kind of drive away with it. And he, in exchange, theoretically, for a couple of tanks of gas, he's willing to kind of help them provide this distraction. And that's what gives you the driving force of the movie, of the climax of the movie. It's this gigantic chase at the end of him doing this. It's like a chase
heist kind of segment in the end.
Right.
And all the bad guys are chasing Max, and they figure Max is like, it's like Smokey and the Bandit almost, or whatever. Max has got the gold. Max has got the gas, and all he became was a decoy.
Right.
It was just such a fantastic, like now everybody knows it. It was just such a fantastic, he basically had to sacrifice himself, but, it was just really a nice twist.
Right. And once again, similar to the first film, where the whole driving force is revenge for him, in this film, you kind of also get that because, as this is all happening, once again, they grab his dog and they kill his dog, which is kind of like the equivalent of them killing his wife again. And that's what kind of drives him and makes him say, all right, I don't care. I'm going to do this. And, we're going to get it done. And let's just talk a little bit about, this is basically on the American side, the breakthrough film for Mel Gibson. This is what puts him on the map as far as the United States goes.
Yeah, I think he was in Gallipoli and...
Yep.
And he was really good looking and a good role, heroic role and everything like that. But he does this, and then it's The Year of Living Dangerously.
Oh, yeah.
And he just blasts off. I mean, A lot of people have a problem. A lot of people who are younger and don't really know Mel Gibson only know him about the nonsense that's happened in the past couple of years. I mean, Mel Gibson was as big as you can get, as good looking as you can get, as, everybody wanted to be Mel Gibson. He was that kind of guy.
I would say that after the Road Warrior films or the Mad Max films, his biggest American success was probably the Lethal Weapon movies that came later.
That was probably like the middle to late 80s.
Yeah, that was huge.
But the funny thing about this movie is people forget. Like, George Miller is not this traditional film school director. I mean, this guy almost became a director accidentally type of thing because he's a fan of movies and stuff like that. But he had opportunities, allegedly, to maybe even direct First Blood with Stallone.
Yeah, I read that somewhere. I'm like, wow, that would have been something.
But he wanted to stick with his own stuff and do a sequel to Mad Max instead. And almost, it wasn't a reboot or anything like that. It is a real sequel. But
oh, yeah. And the other thing to remember also is that on the second film, when you listen to Mel Gibson, that's his voice now. They're no longer screwing around with dubbing for the American audience and that sort of thing. That's him now.
And some of the characters in this one, like, it's funny. This guy, Bruce Spence, plays the gyro captain.
Yeah.
And he's as important of a character in this movie and its future movie, whether he's the same exact guy. I mean, he's basically the same guy.
Yeah,
whether he's exactly the same guy, I would doubt. But he's a pretty cool character, Bruce Spence.
Right. Now, let's talk about the third film, because the third film, obviously, when you have a sequel and it's successful, as huge as Road Warrior, they got to give you a sequel. Let's talk about Beyond Thunderdome. Why don't you tell us a little about how the theme or the plot is a little different now?
Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is essentially a Hollywood sequel. It's not really, but it's essentially as big, it's a big deal.
Uh-huh.
It's a tentpole movie. It's got Mel Gibson, who is now huge Mel Gibson.
Yep.
And at this point, it's got Tina Turner. Now, you say, Tina Turner? If the younger people even know who Tina Turner is, Tina Turner, huge singer from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Okay, now Tina Turner is also doing some acting.
She had a big resurgence in the 80s. That's what kind of brought her back in the mix all of a sudden. A singing career.
But getting her was not, she's not a traditional, leading lady.
No.
But she's got a look and a style and a personality that's just bigger than life. If you don't know who Tina Turner is, listen to her music first of all, and then look into all the other stuff she's done, because she's fantastic and she's still there, and I would love to meet her sometime because I really like Tina Turner. But however, she plays Anti-Entity, and Anti-Entity is basically this...
she kind of runs Battertown.
Yeah. The Outback, the apocalypse, everything is basically now no holds barred. And I tie in a lot of things to Thunderdome in my own life. The highway is Thunderdome. The city is Thunderdome. My job is Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. Anything could happen. It's pretty darn ugly.
Well, that's the thing. That whatever society is left, or whatever society they've now formed, it's almost like the Middle Ages. These kingdoms, if you will.
They create Barter. Anti-Entity is the head of Bartertown.
Right.
What happens in it is in Bartertown, you can enter. You can't bring your weapons. You go in.
And you barter.
You can bring some stuff in. You leave with stuff you need. The funny thing is, Bruce Spence is back. And he attacks and steals Max's stuff.
Unknowingly.
And Max is basically wandering the desert. He's got this pet monkey who basically gives him his boots back. And that's about it. So they steal his stuff. So he works his way eventually to this Bartertown.
To find his stuff, yeah.
And he starts to find things he comes in, you could come into Bartertown, but you got no weapons, blah, blah, blah. And he starts to find stuff. Well, Anti-Entity's people get a glimpse of him and realize this is probably somebody that...
he can handle himself.
Yeah, and they coincidentally need somebody who could handle themselves, because Master Blaster, who is the big bad in this, is basically holding Bartertown hostage at times, because Bartertown runs on methane. Methane comes from pigs. Who wants to run pigs except a bunch of criminals and ne'er-do-wells?
Right.
And so everybody above ground is, these bad guys and Anti-Entity's gang, and all the misfits and not so pretty people are, creating the energy and the pig farm.
Right. Master Blaster has a background in technology and engineering, I guess. So he's the guy who makes the power in that town happen. He's the guy who can process the pig excrement, if you will, and turn it into the methane that's needed to kind of turn the lights on in the town. And her plan is basically to kind of put a hit on him. And that's why she brings Max in. It's almost like a reverse of the Road Warrior. The Road Warrior is the good guys are hiring him to protect them from the bad guys. Here, the bad guys are kind of hiring him to go and hit another bad guy.
Now, the thing here is, this movie had an element that reminds me of how I felt watching Batman Returns. Batman Returns is a really good movie. It still kind of holds up as a, superhero movie. But instead of bad guys, they were sad guys.
Yeah.
You really didn't want to beat up the Penguin. His family, he was kind of malformed. His family kind of all over him. Catwoman kind of was pushed around and thrown away in a sense. Everybody in that movie kind of had an issue, including Batman, that wasn't really making them bad. They were sad.
Explain to us the Master Blaster relationship between the little guy and the big guy.
Master Blaster are 2 guys who, one is a little person basically riding on a big bruiser kind of looking guy with a helmet.
Right.
It makes him look like, I guess it's like a knight of sorts, or he's just got this hard, almost like he's Juggernaut from the X-Men. It's this hard, heavy, big, he's probably like 7 foot tall, or at least he looks like that. And Anti-Entity wants to eliminate the big guy using Max to gain control of the methane and have try to have more power.
Right, and force the little guy to do whichever she wants him to do.
And that's where we're introduced to Thunderdome. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
It's an arena, a battle arena.
It's a big cage. You're on these big rubber bands. There's weapons all around. Some of them are very lethal. Some of them are simply sticks or swords. And Max is supposed to kill to save his own life and then get his freedom. By the end of the fight, the helmet comes off and Max realized this is a special person, a mentally disabled person who's just kind of an innocent doing, his pal is the little guy and he will not kill him. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it brings in that element. It doesn't hurt the movie. I mean, it makes Max more heroic, in fact, that he has a conscience. And Max realized this is nonsense. And because he won't kill him, they want to
exile him.
And everything.
I think they exile him.
Yeah. And that kind of causes Max to now that he's got a new enemy. He's going to go after Anti-Entity. There are people who are sympathetic to Max now that realize he did the right thing, and he works his way back.
Well, but hold on. Before he works his way back, remember, they send him to the desert, and this is where he meets, like, it's almost like the third act of the movie, where he meets a tribe of children, like lost children. They're almost like the kids in Peter Pan or something.
They're desert dwellers. Yeah, and this is what's actually really cool. There's a crashed 747. Of course, it's Qantas because that's the Australian national airline. And he's about to die. And these children save him. And then when he realizes there's a bunch of children up to teenage people, and there's this whole backstory. And they have learned by using a record. And it's basically the whole, I really don't even know what it is, but they've learned using a vinyl record that they've gotten to, that they can hear. And they think of him as Captain Walker because Captain Walker must have been the pilot of the plane.
Right, it was some like children's record or something.
Yeah, they have this whole different language. They've learned only in pieces. They've passed the tell, and the tell is the history, and that's how they figure out who's who. And Max happens to have a similar look to this Captain Walker who has, Captain Walker may have been somebody who was around when they found him and he died or went off to look for help, and now they're back, and the new this could be Captain Walker, who can tell? But they take him to this paradise area where it's almost like Ewok Village and, waterfall and hell, they bring him back to health, but they want his help too.
Yeah, and in a way, it kind of becomes a little similar to the second film, the way that the film ends, and that is the big giant chase. They're going back into the town to free some of the people that he met there and to get the Master out of there with them so he can hopefully escape with the kids and with his knowledge to help them find a new place to live.
Just so I don't confuse anybody, Blaster wound up dying. Max didn't kill him, but they killed him. Anti-Entities people killed him, which made, Master, made him susceptible to whatever Anti-Entity wanted, and he was basically now a prisoner, forced to do Anti-Entity's bidding and give them the free energy and things like that. So Max is going back as revenge against Anti-Entity's group for exiling him to save some of the people accidentally or on purpose, and it becomes another one of those situations where, like in the last movie, there's a chase. They escape on the rails with this, methane-powered whatever it is. It's a train truck or something like that.
Right.
And the children wind up helping, and the gyro pilot winds up helping, and the little kid and everybody.
They end up jumping on because he's got a plane. He doesn't have a gyrocopter anymore. And they are able to fly away into, I believe, the remains of Sydney, but Max doesn't make it. He somehow cannot get into the plane. And once again, like in the second film, he ends up still out there in the desert, kind of roaming the desert, I guess doing good deeds, I guess. And that's how we kind of wrap it up, as far as the third film goes.
Most of the bad guys have been, the really bad guys have been killed in the chase and the fights on the chase. But Anti-Entity is still around, and Max is out there in the desert, beaten up, and they find him. And then she's like, well, I guess we're together now, and that's how it ends. Well, ain't we a pair, Raggedy Man, is how it ends. And then, and then it goes into the finale. But there's like a little coda where finally the children go to Sydney, which is basically destroyed from whatever the war was or lack of energy or chaos. And they're flying into Sydney, and there are apparently other people there. And the impression is now the children will meet up with these other people, tell the story of Max, and, live and create new,
Yeah.
a new society, and or be part of the new society in Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they ever intended originally to make more films, but that kind of wrapped it up. It was a trilogy. That was the end of it. George Miller moved on to bigger and better things. At one point,
George
he had
Miller created Babe.
Well, he
and
was
then,
the producer of the first one, and he directed the sequel, Babe, Pig in the City, which
yeah,
I know
he didn't
you're
create Babe. I apologize. Yeah, I'm a huge Babe fan. I don't want to ruin and say it the wrong way because I love Babe. But yeah, Babe was a book, children's book. He produced it, and it became bigger than ever. I think it was even nominated for some Oscars. And that came out the same year as Pulp Fiction, by the way. It was 1994 was another big year of movies. But yeah, George Miller has had a really good career, and he intended. There had always been some idea to go back years later and try to do more Mad Max, and even with Mel Gibson. And then I guess eventually, like in the early 2000s, it had come up again, and it just wasn't working financially. Mel was into other stuff. He still was having a very successful career. And finally, after Mel's problems, they just had to go in another direction. And that's where we get to Tom Hardy. And I mean, you like Tom Hardy. I like Tom Hardy. We've talked about him. He's been in Star Trek movies. What was that movie, that British movie that he was like a really tough guy? What
he was in Bronson.
Bronson, yeah. And he was in a movie with Daniel Craig, and that was a movie that I love. I mean, he was a smaller character in that one, but...
no, he's huge now. I mean, the guy, he was in Inception. Yeah. He was in... he's just gigantic of an... He's an enormous
He's like
actor.
An action hero. He's a bad guy. He's a lover. I mean, this guy is huge, and... I like him.
And this one also has...
Oh, he was Bane. He's Bane.
Well, yeah, he was Bane in Batman. That's right. But this one also has Charlize Theron, who plays, I guess, I don't know if you want to call her the romantic lead, but she plays a lead female character in this film. And if you look at the trailer, it's funny because the trailer seems to have elements of a lot of the films that are based on this trilogy. Not only very heavy Road Warrior looking stuff, but you do see what looks like a tribe of children, too. So... it's kind of...
I think they're taking a mix, right?
Yeah, I think they're being purposely confusing about it, calling it a reboot or a remake or a sequel. I think it's definitely a reboot because he's playing Max.
Oh, he's definitely the character named Max that we all know.
Right, but the question is, can they pull something off where it can be both a sequel and a reboot at the same time? So in other words, what if he plays the little kid that Max met in Road Warrior?
I think they've established, because at the end of Road Warrior, they established that character grew up to tell the story.
He's the storyteller, right.
In the second one, and in the third one, the younger kid that is with the gyro pilot, it's not the same person. I mean, this is supposed to be the character named Max.
Yeah.
But, again, do we find out this is something after, or kind of just, look, you love that, pick it up here, or something. And that, I think I'd be okay with that too. It doesn't let's leave Mel's Max be and let's do our own thing here.
Well, speaking of Mel, my hope is that somehow, in some shape or form, they get Mel to do a cameo in some kind of a way where they'd make kind of like, wink at the camera type of cameo where you're like, okay,
and
here we
I've
go.
been biting my tongue because at this moment, there's nothing said that there's a cameo, a toss of the hat. There's nothing so far. But there's no problem with Mel Gibson. Mel has no problem with George Miller. And Mel is still out there. And there's a lot of opportunity that he could pop in somehow. Right. And I'm really hoping, as much as I'm excited about this movie, I'm hoping at some point he's somebody in this movie.
Even if it's a cameo or uncredited, whatever you want to call it, he has to be in it somehow. Again, that's just a bonus. That's just the cherry on top of this cake. And like I said before, the trailer blew me away so much that I really hope that the movie, lives up to the expectations, because this is a nice, a lot of times you hear, oh, why are they bothering rebooting this or why are they rebooting that? This looks so different and so exciting and so fresh that it's really, like a breath of fresh air, hopefully, coming this May.
Yeah, we're very close. I'm sure we're going to do a show on it after we see it. But this is one of the top 3 movies I'm looking forward to this year. And if it's as good as the trailer looks, then we're going to see more Mad Max.
No kidding. Well, first of all, I want to thank James for joining me today to covering this Mad Max trilogy and beyond, if you will, because like you said, there's more coming. And I want to thank you guys for listening, and we will see you here soon at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
stupid.
Security forces will use all measures.
The world is almost out of water.
Water wars.
We are killing for gasoline.
Getting close to the terminal freakout point.
Kill the world!
My name is Max. My world is fire and blood.
Want to get through this?
Let's go!
What's your name?
What?
Yay, 10.
Come into Barter Town, but you got no weapons, blah, blah, blah.